we're live on YouTube. Fun beans. I need to mute my YouTube. Yeah, if people could mute all that stuff now, that'd be great. (6:01). Oh, it's 6:02. Kayla, would you like to begin with introductions? I'm just wondering if people can comment if they can see faces of our panelists or... No.
Are you sure it's live?
Yes, it is.
It's on your
Go ahead and
YouTube?
stop the screen share, Liliana, and I think they'll be able to see faces.
There we go. Can you say technologically challenged? Okay, Kayla.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Reed. I am a Wellesley High School alum. I graduated in 2018, and I am going to be a rising transfer junior at the University of Massachusetts Amherst in the fall. For those of you who were not here 2 weeks ago on Tuesday for our first discussion, we opened up our panelists of Black alumni, Black students of both Boston and residents in Wellesley, and we had an open discussion on racism within the entire town of Wellesley and within the schools. This week, we have opened it up to more outside groups, such as other people of color and white students as well, white residents of Wellesley, who have worked within the institutions of Wellesley, other workplaces, and grew up in the town of white privilege and the plastic bubble. Liliana?
So I wanted to introduce our speakers, some returning faces and some new faces, as well as their year of graduation and if they're off to college, where they're headed. We have Sierra Sinclair. She will be attending Boston College, just graduated, class of 2020. Alex Stoddard, class of 2019, attending Williams College. Zoe Bellamy Gomez, class of 2020, attending Howard University. Kalia Rochelle, Wellesley High, class of 2020, University of Rhode Island. Naseem Shaikhi, Wellesley High, class of 2020, will be attending Northeastern University. Yasmin Jaffier, class of 2020, will be attending American University. Olivia Rafter, Wellesley High, class of 2014. Bongani Musigavanu, Wellesley High, class of 2018, will be attending NYU, or is attending NYU in Shanghai. Malik Sinclair, Wellesley High, class of 2019, John Carroll University. Bliss Vernon, Wellesley High, class of 21, is transferring to Deerfield Academy. And Keith Robinson, Wellesley High, class of 2020, will be attending Boston University. We also have Julia Jordal Henry, graduated class of 2019, attending Columbia University. And Manny Bernardo will be joining us shortly. Just some housekeeping things for our registrants on this call. There is the chat function. There's also the Q&A function. The chat we intend to keep for discussions among registrants, whereas the Q&A is for questions that you would like to ask the panelists or that you would like to see addressed in future conversations. The structure that we have designed is for the first 50 minutes to be dedicated to discussion, with the last 10 minutes for questions and comments from the audience. If you're on the YouTube live stream, you can comment directly on the video or use the chat function, which I see some people have already been doing. And with that, I'm passing it off to our conversation facilitator, Kayla Reed.
Hi. So the first question that I am going to ask everybody is, when was the first time you noticed racism? Racism in your town, racism in your school, racism from elementary school, middle school, or high school? And if it was not your first time, when have you noticed racism?
I think I can go first. So yesterday during the protest, I talked about one of my few first experiences with racism. I first experienced it, not first, but like one of the first memories I have was in first grade when I was sitting eating lunch at the cafeteria with my friends, and one girl asked me to move to the other end of the table because my skin reminded her of dirt and she didn't want dirt to get into her food. And that was something that scarred me for a very long time, and I've carried it with me, and it's been self-deprecating ever since. Obviously, I've grown to learn that she was wrong, but it's still really hard to hear in the first grade.
Kalia, in a similar vein of memories from elementary school, as a straight white man, I have not experienced racism personally, but my first experience witnessing racism in Wellesley Public Schools was very early, about first grade, when students that were in my class repeatedly kept asking a student of color who was also in my class if he was from Boston. Despite the student actually living in Wellesley, he was repeatedly asked if he took the bus into Wellesley Public Schools, or where he lived in Boston. And at the time, I did not have the tools to understand that it was racism. But looking back, I understand that they were asking those questions because of the color of his skin.
I think I said this in the other live stream, but I remember when it was within the first couple of months I was attending Wellesley High School. A student decided to record a teacher in her classroom. It was a Black teacher, and she the day Trump the day we were back in school after Trump got elected, and it was reported to the administration, and nothing was really done, but he specifically recorded her and was like, are you mad that Trump got elected, this, that, and the third, and kept on saying various things. And he didn't do that with any other teacher, but I felt like he was specifically targeting her because she was one of the only African-American teachers in the school and his only African-American teacher in the school.
I wanted to echo Keith's point about not having the tools to understand what racism looked like as I was younger. So I am sure that my first encounters with racist confrontations were much sooner than 7th grade, but it was only in 7th grade that I was sitting in on a conversation that my peers were having regarding politics in the Middle East. And at that moment, I realized that my education had not equipped me with the tools to be an active participant in that conversation because I knew nothing about the Middle East. I had not been taught anything about the countries that comprise it, the deep, rich history of conflict within the Middle East and between the countries of our globe and the Middle East. It was at that point that I first recall reflecting on how my education had failed in that capacity. And I didn't know how to identify institutionalized racism because I had never been taught what institutionalized racism was.
So sorry, I was waiting for confirmation from my sister to share this story. But for my sister and I, racism started for her in preschool. She would get in trouble. Sorry, I have birds. She would get in trouble for things, and then they would take her out of the room. And she felt like it was like every time she'd gotten any kind of disagreement with anyone, she would be taken out of the room. And I'd never experienced that in preschool. And in elementary school, wait one second. Sorry, in elementary school, she told me a story about, she went to the principal's office like literally all of the time. And there was a time when she was literally being bullied, like people just were excluding her from a game. And she got upset about it. And the teacher, instead of talking to the people who were excluding her, yelled at her, told her she should learn to control her emotions, and then sent her to the principal's office.
I think for me, it wasn't necessarily my personal experience, but just growing up in my family and watching how my father had to conduct business. He's a businessman. He's very reserved, very disciplined, and wise with how he operates, but he would find himself having to sort of put up a front, and people would force him to I guess, not be able to operate as freely because of his skin color. And they would ask him to calm down, even if he was just describing something, you know, in a very reasonable fashion. And he would have to conduct business in a sort of strange manner simply because people would, I guess, not want to see him in certain places or achieve certain things. So it was just frustrating, especially as a child. You want to see the best in your father. And sometimes he would even be on BBC or something discussing, and they would ask for like very weird suggestions. Like I remember the one time they wanted to put a raccoon hat, like a coon sort of thing, to describe, I don't know, that he's an entrepreneur or whatever, but you know, there's also subliminal messaging in that. So it's just frustrating trying to, you know, do real business or just live as a regular person in this world where they want to put you in or create an image out of you. So that's when I saw that.
What is a microaggression to you?
Before I begin, I would just like to disclaim how, since I'm white, I've never had to experience microaggressions, but based off texts that I've read and perspectives that I've heard, I actually recently read in the book How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi that he believes that microaggressions actually should not be called microaggressions, since it is diluting the effect that it can have on people of color and Black people, especially since the word micro makes it seem like it's something small and that it doesn't have a large effect, whereas it's actually racist abuse that is perpetuated, rather on if it's on purpose or if it's non-intentional. So I have recently tried to change my understanding of this new, instead of saying microaggressions, to say racist abuse, because it has very detrimental effects, even though it is seen as a small thing that happens in during our lives.
Yeah, going off of that, I would say that I would kind of describe them as things that people say or do that are rooted in race but aren't necessarily intentionally racist, but are often based on, I guess, incorrect stereotypes or just assumptions people have about people based on race. And those could be like, like the example from before, what part of Boston are you from, to a Wellesley resident, or when white kids used to say like, oh, I'm blacker than this kid who's a black student. Just things that they may think are jokes or aren't serious, but I guess when you experience them over and over and over like that, they really do add up, and they make a big impact in the way you feel and I guess how you see yourself or your community.
How do you deal with microaggressions? And if you witnessed your friends saying any microaggressions, how have you ever talked to them about it, or did you let it slide?
Like the first microaggression that comes to mind for me is just like every time I straightened my hair and people would tell me that I looked prettier with straighter hair. Like, wow, that I don't think their intention is to be like, you look ugly with curly hair. I do feel like it's rooted in anti-Blackness.
I think I can say like firsthand is that oftentimes microaggressions come from a place of ignorance or not knowing better. And so depending on how you react will gauge whether or not that person will continue along that path of, I guess, emitting microaggressions. So for instance, I study in China, and so my roommates couldn't know less about Black people. I'm the first Black person they've ever met or interacted with. So there's a sort of responsibility that I have to sort of educate them or give them a chance to know better, so that when they do encounter more Black people, they'll have better experiences. But they have messed up. They've said the N-word. They've said things that just wouldn't be okay in a regular, scenario. But because I was able to, advocate. So I would say it's tough, especially because you really don't know where that aggression's coming from. You don't know whether the person genuinely doesn't know better or whether they were actually trying to provoke something out of you. And so the danger then is to underestimate that, but at the same time, you have to be graceful with how you respond. So I would advise for a chance at giving this person an education by saying, hey, that wasn't cool. Tell them, give them the reasoning, but at the same time, be firm with it. And then if it persists, then obviously this person doesn't really respect you like that. And that would gauge how you can further interact with that person. And I would advise to maybe lessen that interaction, because it's only detrimental to yourself.
Yeah, I can say that when I was younger, I definitely internalized it. I didn't really react towards it. But right now, I don't really react. I kind of just ignore, which is not a really great thing to do. It's better to educate people and correct people when they're wrong. But I've kind of just grown tired with having to educate people on the things that it's sad to say they should have already known. So I just kind of let it fly, which is not something I should do. I should definitely correct people.
Sorry. Go ahead, Zoe.
Okay. Going off what Sierra's saying, I think that's a big part, not wanting to put the effort in because you've already done it so many times and corrected people. So especially in school, I'd rather see teachers step up to the plate and as we were talking about, mark the moment. So basically acknowledge that something happened and that what was said was wrong. And then later go back and talk about why that was wrong. But instead of only spotlighting the student that it happened to, I think I'd prefer that the teacher just explain the history behind what their comment is or why that stereotype is incorrect. rather than putting all the pressure on the student.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely with that point, Zoe. This was posted on Black at Wellesley, but there was a time when these white girls came up to me and were literally like, can you just tell me why I can't touch people's hair? Like, why is that? Like, can you just explain that to me? And I literally, I tried to explain it for at least 30 minutes. Like, honestly, I think it was like a whole lunch block. And by the end of it, they were like, I don't think it's offensive. I think I'm gonna still do it. Like, that's not my intent. Like, I'm not trying to make them feel like, I was like, first of all, you do that to like pets. Like, they're like, well, I'm not trying to make them feel like a pet, but like, it's just so pretty. And I was like, bro, like, I'm telling you right now, it's not okay. Like, it's not okay. And they were like, but I was like, no, but like, it was a very frustrating conversation. And it's like, I really think that it has to be not, I feel like in a lot of situations where I've been the only person of color and I don't even experience like a big part of being Black. And it's like, I'm the only person of color that's there. So all of it is thrown to me to tell these people what to do, explain to them, like, this is racist. Like, I just think really people should be putting this on themselves, especially because like, when you ask a Black person to educate you, for me, like, even if it's like a slight thing, I'm just so accustomed to that being followed by, and like, your experiences aren't valid and I'm not going to hear what you actually have to say. So it's like, even if it's like you're coming from the right place, like, if you can do the research by yourself first, like, you should do that.
Yeah, also adding on to what Julia just said, like, I have that inner conflict of like, it's not my job as a person of color to educate anyone, but also like, if I don't, who else will? And like, what happens when they go to someone else and like, this is what they do to someone else and they feel like incredibly worse, like that, like, I feel like I'm inflicting harm on other people by not responding, kind of like situation.
I know in responding to microaggressions, as someone who doesn't experience them as a white man, I've certainly seen other of my peers or just white students in general seeking validation from other white students or just their peers in a group, and owning up to it. There have been times where I have let it slide because there's a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's that I don't expect it to come from that person, and so the shock value causes me to miss the moment, which I think is a huge issue, where students are not taught that that it can come from their friends, from their family, from their parents, their siblings, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, and so it catches them off guard. When, as a white student and as an ally, we need to always be defensive. And so, but they're seeking validation from other white students in the group, and being able to deny that validation and educate them is a helpful way to respond as another white person in the group.
Going off Keith's point, something that I've recently learned is that when a racist comment is made, whether it is very violent or something that is seen as small, no matter what, as a white ally, I have to stand up and say something. And something that's very common to happen after someone is called out for their racist behavior is that they will become defensive. But even if they do become defensive and kind of close off, you still said something, which means that the next time a situation arises where they might say another racist comment, that they will think twice about it, or maybe even think about it like after you say something, and it's something that will stay in their head. Since it is something that's of such a serious topic, it's kind of impossible, in my opinion, for it just to leave your mind. that's something that you'll continue thinking about and even regretting. So you're just planting that seed in their brain and in their conscious that hopefully will continue to grow and prevent racist comments to be made in the future. So anything creates a change, no matter how small.
If I can bring some things in that are being said in the YouTube commentary that I think are awesome thoughts, that one of our audience members says, when I attended Wellesley schools in the 90s, early 2000s, I was implicitly taught that Black was a bad word. Boston and Metco were often used as euphemisms for Black. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how this shows up in the Wellesley Public Schools today. Does Wellesley Public Schools do anything to address this hush-hush anti-Blackness and stereotyping? What are people's thoughts on this?
I definitely think it's still the same. Like in some regard, it's still that kind of like, if you're Black, you're in Mecca, kind of that association. And I think it's, from my perspective, it's definitely gotten better as you get older, but it's still that like, you're Black, so you're in Mecca, or you're like, there, it's kind of like that, I don't know, like that fear of like identifying someone as African American or identifying someone as Black. Like I've walked through the halls and like not even, I've been in the cafeteria, I'm like, I'm Black, and I've seen like people just turn around and stare at me and think that's weird. Like, or like act like what I'm saying is crazy. Or like, sometimes I joke around with my friends, I'm like, I'm tired of these Black people. And everyone just stares at me like, oh my gosh, what's going on? It's like, it's okay to say Black, guys. Like, it's not that serious.
Yeah, to add on to Sierra's, I know Yasmin and I and Sierra have had this conversation many times about identifying all Black people as African American, even though they can come from other regions other than Africa. Like I know myself, Sierra, and Yasmin are all Caribbean Americans. Well, Sierra is also Cape Verdean, but we all don't identify as African American, and I don't find it offensive if you use the term Black, because categorizing us from a country that we aren't from is, in my opinion, is just even worse. So, or continent, you know what I mean? But so I think that I personally think that using the term Black is not as offensive, but other people might have a different opinion.
Personally, as a white person, I will admit that I used to call all Black people African American. Since it sounded nicer kind of coming off my tongue. I thought I was being nicer when I was saying it when I was younger and obviously ignorant. But I've learned, just like Kalia said, that actually saying African American is worse since it is categorizing
It's not worse.
People.
It's just when it's used to certain people who don't identify from like in Africa. Like African American is fine. Just make sure you know that they're from Africa. Never mind. Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like that is like the African American. I feel like people use that when they're trying to be like they're trying to make it
politically
like race neutral. So, right. No, but like no, like race neutral. Like this is not like, I think this because they all come from a specific, they're like, I don't know, like, you know, so like some ethnicities, right, are like they have things in common, but like the truth is they're making generalizations about Black people, like all people who are of a darker skin tone and are like of the whole like Africana, like whatever, like they have like some kind of connection to whatever, but like it's not just like, you know, like the African Americans, it's like literally you're like making judgments based on the color of their skin. Like that's all. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It's not bad, like African American, because there was a huge push to call Black people African American instead of like Negro or something like that. And so I understand why people are doing it. I don't think it's bad. Like I wouldn't get offended if you called me African American because I don't care enough, to be honest. But I would prefer, like, if anything, like Caribbean American, and we can even take it a step above because some people identify as Afro-Caribbean American. But it's just like, I think it's the assumption that all people are coming from the continent of Africa, and like Blackness is so like wide, and there's like such a big variety. I can't talk. Variety that like you can't. I personally would feel uncomfortable if it was just like African American. So if anything, like, yeah, you can call me Black. I know there's like some people have had issues with being called Black because like technically we don't like have the skin color. Some people don't have the skin color Black. But then you can take it to like Caribbean American or something like that, or like wherever someone is coming from in those terms.
In your families, do you guys discuss racism, microaggressions, cultural appropriation? Do you discuss that only when it's on the news, when it's brought up in your schools, or do you actually have these conversations with your parents?
I've been having conversations with my parents about this for like as long as I can remember, because I mean, like literally like me and my sister are like, we see the differences in how we're treated based purely on this, like our skin color. So I think it was literally impossible for them to avoid it. And also like, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it like basically our whole lives.
Yeah, same for my family. I mean, as a Black kid growing up, I feel like a parent can't really hide that from you. Like you're gonna eventually realize it, or you're gonna run into something where it's made known that you're Black. You know, people are white if you're in a white environment. So it's important for parents to talk about that from a young age with a Black kid. Obviously, it might be different for a white family.
Being able to speak from a white family, I have had quite a few conversations about race, but they never happened when I was younger because I frequently found myself having to initiate the conversation. And so I think that becomes a fault, because if you can't initiate the conversation as a parent, then younger children who don't have the ability to advocate for themselves about race have no avenue to talk about race if they're not getting it in schools.
Yeah, I mean, I've always known about like race. I think that's because I'm biracial, and so I knew that my father was Black. But I guess I didn't realize how I played into race because I am more white passing, of course. And so when, you know, when somebody told me that, like I told her that I was Black, and she's like, no, you're not, because of how I look. That was the first time that it like really clicked to me that I can pass like in the world so much easier than somebody that is presents as being Black. And so ever since then, I've kind of been more aware of like situations, and my family talks about race all the time. Being a leader of Yes, I always bring things home to talk about too. So it's like ongoing.
I mean, honestly, I think for me, if I understand what we're talking about, one of the healthiest places to have this sort of discussion is, can you guys hear me clearly? All right, cool. One of the healthiest places to have this sort of discussion is at the dinner table, where it's people you trust and know, and they can educate you, and in a safe sort of environment. And what's interesting is that even though I'm Black, I get things wrong as well. Like there's some things I don't understand, and you need that outside voice to be able to lovingly correct you. And I think that, you know, definitely one of the best sort of moments is when a loving correction occurs at a dinner table or with a loved one. So I think it's very important to conduct these discussions at home. Oh, this is Marcus. He's joining us.
Those of you who don't remember me, my name's Marcus Jarrett, class of 2018. So yeah, I feel like this is definitely a discussion that needs to be had, because these are very turbulent times. And I know as well as all of us that as the Wellesley community, we are no stranger to racism and factors like this. So yes, most definitely.
How do you define white privilege? And do you discuss white privilege at home with your families?
So I'll start off just speaking about how I define white privilege for myself, which is that the system that I use to find success in Wellesley, as in stuff like having a weighted GPA, meaning at colleges our GPAs get boosted because we live in Wellesley and they say that the classes are more challenging. So when you apply to college, your GPAs get boosted. Being able to participate in after school activities, being able to see my friends in Wellesley, and having no disciplinary record, having teachers be kinder and more forgiving, and with Wellesley being a larger or a smaller microcosm of, I guess, the system in the United States, me having the privilege to be able to find success with the same system that is built for whiteness, that is not built to provide that same success for people of color, and oppresses those people rather than allowing them to find the same success that I do with the same amount of effort.
I think the simple version of it, in all, not applying it necessarily in the context of Wellesley, is that white people get to benefit from a system that was created for them. And that's the most simple way I can put it. And to add on to that definition, I think that it has to do with even if a Black person came from the same background on socioeconomic terms or just whatever, it's that white people still have this step ahead, or a white person with the similar credentials or something like that will still have this step ahead because of their whiteness and how the system benefits them.
Yeah, I define basically what Yasmin was saying, white privilege as I compare it to running a race. And when you start a race as a white individual, you have nothing in front of you. You can just run to the finish line. But as a person of color, as a Black person in general, you have so many different obstacles that you have to just get through in order to even get a chance to be as equal as everyone else. And whenever someone talks about white privilege, I think about that picture of that little boy who's on that it's not a stool, but it's a platform, and they're trying to with his a taller person, and they're watching a baseball game or something, and he's trying to see over the fence, but they both have a step stool, and it's that's equality. We need equity. And that's what I think about when I'm thinking about white privilege.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, continuing off of that same analogy, for a lot of the people who I guess have trouble understanding white privilege, or say, I've had a really challenging time here, and here in my life, so how can I have white privilege? I think that analogy works great, particularly when you're talking about the white person's running the race. You're putting in effort, but the amount of effort that you have to put in comparison to a person of color is so much less. So you can still have challenging times in your life, and still have white privilege. You can still have negative experiences in your life and still have white privilege, because you're still running the race. But people of color are having those experiences more. They're having issues with the system, which is something that white people, are not experiencing.
The question is, what is white privilege to me? White privilege is literally my entire life. I feel like I am in a very unique position because I've been so aware of it because I have a twin sister who basically looks almost exactly like me, except that she is darker skinned and has more black appearance. And I talk about it kind of a lot, like, because to me, it's like I'm really proud to be Black, but there's also a part of being Black that I don't experience. And it gives me a lot of advantages that I've like noticed almost like every day of my entire life.
I think a big part of white privilege is also not having to think about the fact that you're white, because everyone you go to the store looks like you. Everyone on TV looks like you. All the dolls you played with growing up looked like you and stuff like that. And I think in my experience as a Middle Eastern person, I'm still white passing. So it's been a privilege for me to be able to assimilate and like basically put that part of my identity aside to fit in with the rest of white society. But that is not a privilege for people with darker skin.
Yeah, adding on to that, it's like those little things that white people are afforded in society that people of color aren't. Like, I don't think anyone understands how excited I was to hear that like Band-Aids are like now every shade of color. Like, that's so exciting. Like when I was little, like watching the Proud Family, like seeing a family of color on Disney Channel, like that's revolutionary. I was kind of disappointed with The Princess and the Frog because I didn't get to see that princess the whole movie, but I was excited that there was a princess that like looked like my friends, that looked like people that I surrounded myself with, not necessarily looked like me, but was a person of color that I could somewhat relate to.
I think I mainly notice it when in school, like I'm able to go through the majority of my school days not thinking about race, unless I'm talking to my other friends. But I don't have to worry about, somebody saying something to me like about my race and like disrupting how I learn, which I know is a big factor in a lot of people's lives, that even going to school can be stressful because they don't know what their classmates are going to say. So, I mean, that's where I see that I benefit from it a lot, which is really sad.
On the topic of racism, white privilege, microaggressions, cultural appropriation, racial profiling, stereotyping, all of that under the same umbrella, how do you think the Wellesley Public Schools handles all of it? How can they improve, and what can they do better? If they speak up, do you appreciate them for speaking up? What do you dislike about them speaking up? What do you like about it? And is there any justice served?
I think my first reaction is just like answering the demands, to be honest. Like, we've been talking about the same thing over and over again, and it's pretty frustrating for the individuals that have been fighting for this like for so long to keep on talking and talking and talking. And at this point, like it's a matter of urgency, like at this point where we've taken years to do this and now the demands need to be met, or at least like there needs to be some kind of plan that we are actively seeing happening to see that demands are at least being addressed. And if one demand can't be met, then that's okay. But the other ones, if they can be, like, it should be met. And I'm gonna like say that to the end of the days, like these demands have been here for 2+ years. Again, the demands from Yes came up again through another like Wellesley High School graduate, not even knowing that Yes had demands, and it's the exact same demands. And then now at the protest, there are demands. There's so many demands. Like at this point, if they're not being addressed, then what are we talking for? What am I wasting my breath for?
Yeah, adding on to what Yasmin's saying, I'm kind of like just tired of the excuses, like the going around, like we're doing this And like, but like, what are you actually doing? Like, don't tell me you're doing something and then like 2 years later, I'm asking you about the same exact thing. It doesn't take 2 years to allow me to see what you're doing. Like, I understand there's some things that we can't know. Like, there's some like things that we just like, it's not legal for us to know, or it's not right for us to know, whatever the reason may be. But there's a lot of things that need to be put out to the public and a lot of things that need to be done, because honestly, it shouldn't be that difficult to have a MECO room or an affinity space for people of color. It's not that difficult. It's a room. It's one room for people to sit in and have a safe space. It's not that difficult to make it clear on how you're trying to get people of color in the public school system as teachers. It's not that difficult to do the bare minimum. And that's what everyone's asking. No one's asking you to shoot up a rocket ship in the air and like try to solve issues. No one's asking that. I'm not trying to ask you to flip and switch the system. I'm asking for you to do the bare minimum. And that's like taking 2 years to do at this point.
Yeah, so agreed. I totally agree with what you're saying, Sierra. Someone told me the other day that they thought that the protest from last year was like, first they thought it was by white people, and like it was Wellesley saying, oh, we support our Black students, which was because I guess, yeah, that was really concerning. Anyways, it was mostly, I think what that person was saying was because the principal, Dr. Chisholm, Dr. Chisholm, he had voiced our support for us, but then like what happened? What was like the follow-up? Like we didn't even get our one demand, which was keep the MECO room. Like that was our huge, like we had lots of other demands, but that was like our big one that we really wanted. Like that was like a huge, like we need this, like that was for so many of the people that were organizing that, like that was the key reason that we walked out. And yeah, I guess in that way, like right, you want to support us, but like you need to be, I want you to do it in the background. I want you to do it in the background, not being like, oh, in the front, right? Oh yeah, this is great. We support our kids, like glad they're here. And like send the news, and when the news comes and ask you questions like, oh yeah, we support them. No, like actually support us, actually do the demands that we're asking for. Like don't say you support us before you do the demands that we've asked for. Because like if someone took our protest as, oh, Wellesley as a community is coming together. No, that was the Black kids of Wellesley High School and like their allies saying, hey, this is messed up. We need to draw attention to this. And if by you not like being the right kind of ally, by you just saying, oh, we support them, the people are thinking you are in charge of that. Like you did something wrong there. Like Wellesley didn't approach that right, because you first of all, like you weren't supporting. Like there was not a lot of support, and then there was eventually, but when we were all out there, like whatever.
And I think somebody asked a question, what was the rationale for no MECO room? So just to give a quick background, like for those that don't know, how it started off was that students of color used to, like, you ever read the book, like, what is the book title? Like, why do all the Black kids sit together? Right? Yeah, cool. So like in multiple times of the day, especially at lunch, people would see the Black kids sitting together and like a couple of their friends and stuff like that. And they were moved around because there's been, I think what it was is that people were not sitting in the cafeteria anymore, because like that's not the most comfortable place, mainly because the year before, I think my freshman year, people were calling it Cafrica, like when they were sitting in the cafeteria. So then students moved to a different location, and then they were told that they couldn't be at that location anymore. So then they moved to a different location. They were told they couldn't be at that location anymore. And then it just got to like, people are gonna sit in the MECO. And then like, I don't know, there was a situation in the MECO room, like one incident. And then it was, the school needs to repurpose the room for an academic space. So that's kind of partly what started the walkout. And that was our number one demand. And then the METCO coordinator for the high school, he left the high school. And so there was no one to necessarily be in that room. Mind you, also the METCO room was also, before that, was also being regulated a lot. We also call it the Boston room, or like we call it affinity space now, by the way. And that affinity space was always being regulated. The door was always being locked. Teachers were always there. Like it was like more so than any other place that I've seen in the high school, even though other places in the high school have had multiple incidents and higher degrees of incidents than what that one incident in the the affinity space was like being a part of. And then afterwards, Mr. Hightower left, and then a new person became the METCO director. And then it was like, we're gonna repurpose this into an academic space. And then this academic space, but like for Boston students. But then it never happened. And then there was like a compromise that was happening. At the end of the day, it's the METCO room or the affinity space pretty much got like shut down in a way, for the simple version. Like it just wasn't the METCO space or the affinity space anymore.
There is a great comment on YouTube that I wanted to share about theater kids being able to eat in the stairwell. I was one of those theater kids being able to eat lunch in the stairwell all the time with no problem, and that is white privilege at work in our schools.
Kayla, just to answer your question, in addition to what everyone else has said about how Wellesley has handled racism, I think that you can see how ineffective it's been by the frequency of microaggressions towards students of color, because large, like overtly racist events can be the cause of racist individuals. And I'm not denying there are racist individuals in Wellesley, there most certainly are, but microaggressions are more commonly due to a racist system that doesn't teach kids not to fetishize and appropriate Black hair, Black culture, and leaves them in high school still not knowing why the things that they're doing are offensive to students of color. And so I think that shows how it's failed the student population of Wellesley, because they don't know those things. And that's why this is still happening on an everyday basis to students of color, because the system isn't teaching them from a young age that it's not okay.
I read in a statistic somewhere that by age 2, kids can recognize people of different races. And by age 4, white kids are already preferring to play with white kids. And I think by age 12, white kids, like racist beliefs are basically set in stone in their brains. Despite this research, I don't remember talking about race or racism all throughout elementary school. I think we talked about segregation and slavery and MLK, maybe for a few days, but that's it. So I think with that lack of education, and of course our racist institution, it's no surprise that we still see racist incidents in WPS today.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, I think I said this either before or in our meeting earlier, but like the education needs to start like at such a younger age, because even specifically with things like microaggressions, kids need to be taught like what a microaggression is, and how powerful they are at a young age, because a lot of us learn about them for the first time, like an actual definition in high school. And by that point, kids have been experiencing them for possibly like 10 plus years. And just not even understanding what it really is and why they are so powerful. So that's the kind of thing that needs to be taught, probably even in elementary school from a really young age, so that people know the power of their words and their actions.
If I can offer my perspective, the first time I heard the word microaggression was in my freshman year of high school, and it was a lesson taught about microaggressions by white teachers, and white teachers teaching me about how it's not okay to touch a Black girl's hair didn't make any sense to me. And I think that just underscores that there need to be teachers of color teaching about microaggressions and teaching about these things. And a big question is how to make our school system a place that attracts teachers of color that have the resources and experiences to actually teach in depth and lessons that stick about microaggressions.
Yeah, also adding on to this part about teachers of color, I was watching a video, and it was really interesting to see that a white teacher views a white individual, a person of color way less than they view a white student. And then when it's a Black teacher or a person of color, it's like equal, like they view each child as an equal. And like that just shows you like the fact that majority of WPS is white, and it's like a sad percentage of like 8% that is people of color that are teaching. Like 8% of your school system is viewing students of color equal to their white counterparts. 8%, not even close, like it's not even 10%. It's 8% of your school system that's viewing these kids as equal, and a whole 92% that's viewing them as less inherently. Like, that's so problematic.
As we begin to ask our final questions, we are going to open up the floor for all of our viewers to ask all of us questions. And as you guys write your questions, a question was asked. For those of you about to go to college for the very first time, what are you looking forward to about your college approach to race and social justice? What are you nervous about or skeptical of?
I can say right off the bat, especially reading the stuff about these colleges on like Black at whatever, I'm terrified. Like, I am absolutely terrified. I'm leaving, like, for me, like, I know like I'll be somewhat fine because I'm so immune to like this school system that it won't be a shock. But I'm scared that no one's gonna be there to help me, or like, I don't know, like I'm scared I'm not gonna be able to handle it anymore. Like I'm just gonna explode.
I think my school is rated like #1 for social activism or something like that. And at first I was like, ooh, this is nice. This is nice. But then I'm looking at this Black at, like, I'm not gonna say the school because I don't really know if I can or whatever. But like I'm looking at Black at like the school name, and I'm like, this is not nice. This is not nice. Like, I'm not here for it. And I knew like coming into it, it's a predominantly white institution. And I know like I probably shouldn't have got my hopes up like that. But I mean, that's craziness was going on over there. So I'm like a little bit nervous, but I'm not going to judge the place completely yet until I have like my own experiences being in that space and seeing how like this whole like protesting George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all this, like this whole situation will be addressed while we are on campus.
One thing I'm looking forward to in college is taking actual classes on race and racism, which is not something that we had access to at WPS. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But I also think at so many colleges that racist incidents still occur and are still swept under the rug, which makes me less hopeful or excited.
As a person who's in college right now, I just want to say that, like, yeah, there are going to be racist things still happening in your college. For me, I go to very, I don't know what to say, very full of people who are activists. I'd say that people who really care. And I found that like it was at least very comforting to have like such a strong community. And like I think that in college there's a lot of people like you're literally going there. You've all been accepted because you did well in high school. Like you're going there, and I think you'll be able to find like a group that when you see something that happens wrong, sorry, Zoe. Oh, anyway, sorry. Okay. But when you see something that happens wrong, I think you'll be able to find the support of your peers, hopefully. I mean, I do go to a very nice school, but yeah.
So I chose Howard University. One of the main reasons was because it's an HBCU. So, I mean, I bet, okay, so there's probably still going to be racism, but I think it's going to be at such a less degree than at a predominantly white institution. So that's why I chose it, because to be honest, I just couldn't handle another 4 years of having to fight within my school for, just transparency about what is happening in terms of like when racist incidents happen. So that's where I personally, I couldn't go through that anymore. So.
Oh, who goes? Okay. Yeah, so just to add on to Zoe, I think Zoe might experience colorism less than racism at an HBCU, because it's going to be a big light skin versus dark skins thing there. I can already see it coming. But yeah, so now I'm going to talk about my school. I was really excited. I chose URI because I'm going to swim there, and it's a really good Division I school. But the percentage of white people there is insanely high compared to any other school on my list. I think it was like the highest percentage of white people. I think it's like 85% white. And it won't be a huge culture shock, but like I know I'm going to experience racism. Like I'm already preparing myself, because there was a video released of 4 sorority girls purposely reciting the words to Chris Brown's Freaky Friday song, where the lyrics go, "What up my N-word, what up my N-word," over and over and over. And the girls in the sorority were literally saying it as a joke, and it pissed me off. I put it on my story, and I was like, is this really what I'm about to experience for the next 4 years? Really had me contemplating transferring. But I just know I'm gonna have to prepare myself for that. And it's something that it's not new to me, like that type of atmosphere. So I think I'm ready to take it on.
I know for me, I chose Bridgewater State University for my first 2 years. And I chose it because I thought I wanted to be a teacher for early childhood education. That changed, however, because teaching is not my passion. But I also chose the school because it was smaller, and just hearing the numbers, it was a diverse school, and it would be a nice change of pace for me because Wellesley is not big on diversity. And towards the end of my sophomore year, I experienced racism throughout both years, but mainly my sophomore year. And it really broke me. And I was also a dance major there, and I've been on their dance teams. And I experienced racism and microaggressions from just being there. And it resulted in me on leaving one of my practices crying. I asked to go home. I can't take everything because what they were saying about me was not true, and it was what they were doing it, but blaming it on me. And I was not going to be in an environment that was not safe for me, both emotionally and mentally. And the school found out, but the school did nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. They gave me a letter saying I violated the community standards when I didn't, but they wanted me to come to a meeting. And they gave the same letter to the whole e-board and 2 other members, but their punishment was having time away from their team coming to the meetings. Well, then I must have had the same punishment and much worse. And I remember just telling my mom, like, I can't spend another 2 years at that school as a dance major being surrounded by those kids. because I was losing my passion for something that I've been doing since I was 3, because those kids made me feel unsafe. And I went and I auditioned, and now I'm transferring to UMass Amherst. I'm not saying that I'm not going to experience racism any less than I did at Bridgewater, but I know I will have a much better success at UMass Amherst when it comes to racial injustice and racial equality than I will at Bridgewater State University.
For me, having finished up my first year of college, this kind of goes back to I think what Nassim was saying about taking classes about race in college and having the chance to do that. So I was able to take a class with a Black professor about race this year, which I guess, like we said, isn't really an option at Wellesley besides Diverse American Voices, which I took my senior year. But just having that opportunity to really take a class with a Black professor or a Black teacher is definitely really important. And even in my current school at Williams, we face kind of the similar problem as in Wellesley, and why a teacher would want to teach at the school and like keeping Black teachers there. But I guess I just want to emphasize how important it is for Black kids to really have a Black teacher that they can go to and trust, and how I guess I didn't really have that for most of high school or most of my time at Wellesley, but having that, especially in the last few years at Wellesley, was really important to me, and definitely gave me someone I could trust and really go to with any problems, or just to even just talk about life in general.
I just have one little thing to add. Like going to Columbia this year, I just realized, like, I guess it was just like leaving Wellesley. Like, I realized how much I'd been putting up with, thinking like, oh, this is normal. Because like in Columbia, like we called people out on those things. Like that wasn't acceptable. Like I don't know, I feel like that's just of note. Like I realized like both as, and like this is also just something Liliana was asking, which is like both as a woman and as a person who's biracial, like there was so much racism and sexism that I was putting up in Wellesley that like just isn't acceptable at Columbia. And it took me to getting out of Wellesley to be like, hey, wait, I can ask for more. Like I can, and this is why I'm here. Like I can say, hey, these things are not okay. Like it made me feel bad in the moment, and that is because it is wrong.
The question to which, oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to re-articulate the question to which Julia is responding, that somebody in the YouTube comments said, I'm interested to hear from students about how they experience the intersectionality of race and gender in Wellesley, for example, being Black and female versus being Black and male.
Sorry, go ahead. Is someone saying something?
No, you go. I can't speak to that very well.
Oh, okay. So I don't think I'm the best person to talk about this, but I think that someone should talk about the fetishization of Black men in Wellesley versus the like complete disregard for Black females in Wellesley. Like completely, like that was one of the, like the biggest things socially between me and my sister. Like men would hypersexualize her, talk about how nice her butt is, but never even consider dating her. Never. That she just isn't their type. That's not their preference. That is like the biggest thing. I don't think I'm the best person to talk about it, but please someone talk about it, because it is so messed up.
I know for myself, I have like similar experiences to your sister Anna. Like they will always comment on how big our butts are, and I think also what really hurts is hearing that you're pretty for a Black girl. And it's just not all Black women are ugly, but just hearing that, it makes it seem like, oh, why is it only me? Oh, you're an exception. You're not like the other Black girls I meet, You're not like the other MECO students. You're more calmer. You're more nicer because you actually talk to the white kids. And it's just comments like that make MECO students and other Black students not want to be around the students and the population of Wellesley, because you're assuming based on stereotypes and what you see that we are all ghetto, ratchet, loud, raunchy. Not all of us.
Angry.
Angry. You know, not every Black woman is going to have a big butt. Not every Black woman is going to have a big boobs, afros. Some Black women have naturally straight hair, short hair, and it's just, but see, going off of what Julie said, they won't date us. They can say all these things, but they won't date us because we're not their type. They're too scared to date us. I remember like some of my friends from Wellesley, they'd be like, oh, I wish I took you to prom, or I wish I took you to Cotillo because you seem really nice and I loved what you were wearing. And I had to tell them, you know, I'm not eye candy to you. I'm not a reward to you. If you wanted to take me as a friend, well, you should have done that before you saw me in my outfit. If you wanted to be my friend then, well, you should have been my friend now. Oh, I was scared to talk to you because I was intimidated by you. How are you intimidated by me if you don't know who we are? How are you intimidated by them because you don't know know who they are? And I think another issue for both Black men and women who choose to do sports, plays, all of the after school activities, what also hurts is that I never knew you were actually good at that. Wow, you're actually really talented. As if we weren't supposed to be good at basketball or dancing or singing. And it's just small things like that, like, wow, I never knew. Oh, you're pretty for a Black girl. Oh, you scoring touchdowns for us? Oh, you must be athletic because you're Black. You run fast because you're Black. It should not be about color, but yet kids are taught it's about color.
I'll say that I can't necessarily speak to the fetishization, if I said that right, of Black males, but I can say I was sort of forced into a box, like what you're saying. Like I had to be a caricature of self in order to hang out with certain groups or certain people. I had to sort of play the part. And so when I didn't play the part, they would be like, oh, you're not Black. You're like, you're an Oreo, you're a coconut, you're white on the inside. And so that's something that I had to kind of, you know, shrug off, which is like ultimately, like if we were to go back to that previous question, why I was so ready and willing to leave the country to go to college, because I wasn't trying to go and experience the exact same thing in college. I wasn't trying to like force myself to fit into something that I didn't even want to fit into. So I figured if I was going to go to college, I would want to go and have an experience in which I could learn and grow. There's my mom, she's coming. Mom, I'm talking to the town. So I went to China, and I think that it helped me grow as a person, because I realized that I could actually educate people with regards to my identity as a Black man, and grow in a sense, being myself, you know, as naturally as I could. So yeah.
I would like, that was a very good question, and I feel like people just like do not like, no, I'm not gonna say generalize like that, but like I know a lot of people don't even ask that question or think about it. Because honestly, it is tough being a Black girl or for young lady or whatever at Wellesley High School. It is tough. Like I have heard like outrageous stories of like the hypersexualization of Black female bodies. I've heard the disrespect that people have had for Black girls in the school. Like, for example, and I won't say a name because that would be rude, but one of my friends, she did tell about an experience where like these two white students did like grabbed her butt or something like that of the sort in front of everyone, and she felt like enough wasn't happening. And so I mean, I don't know the complete situation with that, but I do know that like there have been multiple experiences like that, or there have been multiple experiences of like Black girls being called the angry Black woman or something similar to that. That actually just happened to like three of us on this call the other day. And it's not only coming from white people, it's coming from Black men, coming from Black women, coming from Black people in general as well in the school system. So there's a whole other layer to being a Black woman in the high school that people don't like. It's not that they don't care, it's just that it's not treated with enough care that we would like it to be treated.
Chiming on to Yasmin's point that she just said about how it's not just white people that are doing this to Black women. It can also be Black men. And I know there was one incident where, so there was two boys and one was gonna ask out a Black girl. And then his friend said, no, you can do better. And that he should rather choose a white girl to go with. And he ended up listening to his friend, but it just, things like that just minimize, you know, Black women. And the whole thing, like, you can do better, like that just doesn't make sense, because how can, it's basically saying that all Black women are the same, and then it puts a bad connotation onto them, and that white women are fantastic and they're just, you know, above Black women, which is just horrible. And I know that that hurt a lot of people when they heard the story. So just incidents like that I've heard.
Also, like, adding on to what everyone is talking about in general, like recently this year, this girl made a TikTok and it was like these like white babies, like what my mom thinks I'm gonna have, and then it was like mixed children, what I'm actually gonna have, and I'm like, what is, like, this is like the environment, it's like the fetishization of children too, like it's just like uncalled for. And these were like baby girls, and it was just like, first of all, how do you know your child's gonna come out that way? Why are you like wishing that your child's gonna come out a certain way? You should just wish that your child's gonna be healthy. And like, why do they have to be mixed to be good in your eyes? Like, and I feel like with like the Kardashians specifically, the fact that they're a famous like family, and the fact that they all have biracial children, not all of them, actually, no, except for one, majority of them have biracial children. And it's like that kind of like, I want to be like them, so I want to have like biracial children. And it's just like, that's not okay. Like, you can have whatever kid you want to have, but like, do not like, I don't know, don't like, it's not build a baby. Like, we are not doing that. You need to just like hope you have a good child.
And this was a Wellesley High School student who posted that on TikTok. I just wanted to emphasize, these are your own students still at the high school that are literally talking about having biracial children, not like regular, not like, I want a dark skinned biracial child, I want a light skin, green eyes, but like kind of tan skin. Like, it's weird.
They pick and choose what they want from their Black side. And it's, as you're saying, it's not build a baby. It's just, it's creepy how then you're taking traits that, you know, Black people have, and you're picking which ones are you're okay with and, you know, you can tolerate, but you're not also factoring in that that child is going to be Black, and you already are showing signs of not understanding what it means to have a Black husband or partner or whatever. Like, there, it's just, it's very hard to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and more, sorry.
No, you can go. I'll go after you.
No, go ahead, Kayla.
No, I'm going after you.
Okay, fine. Basically, I was just gonna say, like, if we just look, like, I don't know about other people's grades, but just looking at like my grade and who dated who, like, most of the Black men were dating white girls, and the Black women were not in relationships. And if they were in relationships, they were in relationships with people outside of school. And like, I just like, and also I had, in the beginning of high school, like, most of my friends were white, and there were like, some of them didn't even mean what they were saying, but they were just like, would be like obsessed with Black men, and the more thug they looked, like the more attractive they were. And that was just, oh, so bad.
And if I could chime in, yeah, I would say that during my time at Wellesley, as a Black man, I feel that I was put in a situation where, yes, I had to play a role. Like, if I were to wear a do-rag, they say I'm a thug, but if my white friend wears a do-rag, then he's considered cool. And it's things like that that made me fully aware of the concept that no, we can't do the same things that they can do. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've seen white kids jogging down the road behind us, and when they do that, they don't have to worry about going back to what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. They don't have to worry about two people chasing them down and taking their life. And it's just a whole double standard that we've experienced for far too many years, hundreds and hundreds of years, and yeah.
More.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was on, like, I have two beautiful sisters, Michelle and Gil Agnes, and they were both above me in school, and it was kind of like a first-hand education in how to be a strong character, like how to be resilient, because they simply, like you're describing, didn't have opportunities to be in a comfortable relationship in Wellesley High because they weren't presented with them. And it's like to a brother, like, I want to protect them and I want the best for them. I want them to have the best relationships, but at the same time, like, I was only able to admire how strong they were as people to be able to continually go to that school and apply themselves in the face of generalization and I don't know, a lack of appreciation. And I think there was a tad bit of fear, because I do remember, you know, my oldest sister was in school, and a white boy did end up asking her out, but it was from a very sort of uncomfortable position, because he knew that he would even be scrutinized by people he knew for making that advance. And so that fear resided in him as a result of sort of this taboo that existed in the air, and that shouldn't be a thing. So I don't know, that's what I would have to say about that.
I think just from hearing all of this is taken from my ending lines from my speech from the protest yesterday. Black is magic, Black is beautiful, Black is unique, Black is valuable, and you take that for granted. And it's just going along the lines of, you want to have Black babies, you want to have mixed babies, but you don't really understand what we go through. You choose to not fully understand. You just want to look like the Kardashians. You want to look cool in front of your friends that you're dating a Black man or a Black woman. But even with the Black woman, everyone forgets about the Black woman. Black women are in dead last below the Black man in America for justice, equality, and to be treated as equal. Black women are more hypersexualized, and I learned about hypersexuality this past semester for the very first time. And the fact that I learned about that in college is very upsetting. And schools need to start teaching about hypersexuality, especially about the Black and brown female body. And although we can't control people's urges and like their thoughts, but we can teach them about how it is rude and it damages a Black woman's image on her own self and how they view them own selves. There was a beautiful question that I want to answer before we do our final takeaways. And do MECO students shy away from HBCUs because white peers do not acknowledge the institutions? Does the MECO program encourage or provide affordable resources for students to visit or attend an HBCU? What are your thoughts about pairing system for host families? Does this help or hurt your experience? And within that question, can we also, as everyone answers this final question, can we also share our takeaways as we begin to wrap up for the takeaways for all the viewers tonight? Sierra.
I can say that I didn't choose like an HBCU personally just because I got basically a full ride at a different school. Like that's mainly the reason. Like I couldn't afford to go there and I wasn't gonna put myself in debt to do so. But yeah, that's the main reason.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't really have, I guess, any really closing thoughts. I guess, similar to what I said last time, keep using these opportunities in these kind of spaces to listen to Black voices and really hear what we're saying. And then after you listen, like think about ways that you can actually make a difference in your own towns or wherever you are. And don't just listen just to listen. Really think about what you can do to make an impact.
I just wanted to kind of talk about, just like in my final thought, like how Bobo was saying he felt like he had to fit a role. And I feel like that is like really well shown by like the superlatives of my year. I don't know, I can't speak to other years, but I think the only Black person that won one of those nominations was the rapper. And we had people for best hair and they gave it to a white man. And there was not even, I think I was the only one nominated in that category. And literally I had a friend who was like, I really want you to win best hair because like, I think you're the only person who get it. And at least you're like half Black. And I was like, no, what? You'll definitely get nominated. Like your hair is great. And she's like, no, like I literally know I won't. And I was the only person nominated. And then I didn't even win because they gave it to a male with long hair that is literally like the most common. Like he is not alone in having long hair. Like, anyways, so I just think we need to think about how we kind of exclude or we don't welcome the individuality of Black people. We kind of push them into, this is what you are. Like, you're the athlete, you're the rapper, oh, you're the funny kid, like, and don't really allow them to be just people. And I think we as Wellesley can do better. That's it.
Just jumping off of as Wellesley, we can do better with some closing thoughts because I have to go. Wellesley has a pretty clear path in front of them. They need more Black educators. But to reiterate one of the comments on the stream, you won't get Black educators coming to Wellesley. They won't be attracted to the school until you make it a safe space for them. We've had racial incidents with Black teachers in the past, so there's no reason that they should feel comfortable coming to a school that is attacking them. So Wellesley needs to educate their students starting from a young age, and they need to bring in more Black educators so that people can have a proper education on racism. Because from what some other panelists have said, white educators cannot do the same justice that Black educators can do on topics like microaggressions and the Black experience. And it needs to be taught from a young age, and so this needs to be a district-wide implementation if we want to create any change. Thank you guys so much for inviting me.
So I think the first question was on the HBCUs. I'm not a MECO student. I was in ABC. So I'm going to come in with that approach. And being at the high school as well. HBCUs were never talked about. And because I had the prior knowledge of being from New York and also like being in a Black family as well, like I knew what HBCUs were. And so then I came into high school knowing that I would really consider an HBCU, and I ended up considering I considered Howard, and that was in my top two, like deciding between. I ultimately went with American for more different reasons, but I ultimately did. And I think my guidance counselor, I think he only knew about Spelman and Howard, to be honest, but HBCUs, there's a lot of them that people don't realize. And definitely the guidance counselors need to get their knowledge about that. They need to grow their knowledge on that, because I feel like HBCUs, even though they have a rap for not giving as much money and stuff like that, I think it's still worth it to at least apply or visit or something like that, because you might be looking for something like that. Then the other question was about host families. I'm not again, I'm not in the MECO program, and I know they had host families when they were younger. ABC people have host families when they're in high school, being in our specific program. And I definitely think that I got the better deal with my host family, and I know other people have as well. But I do know that, like, definitely host family, like if you're going to be a host family, and the same thing applies to the MECO program as well, it can't be just a random person. Like it really can't, or a random family, because you are now surrounding yourself around Black and brown children, and you need to be educated, point blank period, like on what that would entail, and like who you are surrounding yourself with. You need some kind of diversity training or something like that, because, and I would advocate that for any like program in the school, there needs to be diversity training, or else like you're going to do a real big disservice to the Black and brown children that are in your programs and that are coming to the school as well. Then the last question was my like ending thought. My ending thought is just like keep on coming to these meetings, follow yes, to be honest, and just keep on participating. And at the end of the day, we really need, like, I'm going to emphasize this more and more time, we really need the school, the district, everyone to really try to handle these demands, because everything that everyone has been talking about is in the demands. Hiring new teachers, in the demands. Like, even like we even volunteered ourselves to help you hire new teachers and to go out to these panels with you. That, like, I can't even like emphasize enough. Like, we volunteered ourselves. Like, at this point, like, it needs to be like, you need to handle these demands, or there's no talking anymore. Talking for like 2, 3 years, 4 years, like, it's not going to work anymore. You need to handle the demands, or else it's not, like, we're going to be at the exact same spot we've been at this whole entire time. It doesn't make sense. So handle the demands. Give us what we want, pretty much. Or if you're not going to give us what we want, at least tell somebody you're not going to give it to us. Don't like, oh, yeah, cool. Thanks.
Well, I didn't add on to what I was gonna say after that. I thought we were just answering the question, but basically what Yasmin said, give us the demands, like this is the bare minimum, but like also realize where you stand in society and like how you are privileged and like what opportunities you have, and then work to use that privilege to fight the system. Like, being an ally isn't just a 5-minute thing. Like, microwave activism is a really real thing that a lot of people participate in, and being an ally is a lifetime thing. Like, this is a second job. I can't even express to you enough how many hours I've put in, and I'm tired of being like existed in my own body as a Black individual. So do more, and yeah, I don't have anything else on that.
I guess my my takeaway points are pretty much the same as Yasmin and Sierra, but I really want to see more support from the community and from teachers to help move these demands forward, because I think it's pretty clear that they're no longer really listening to students, especially students of color. That's just like a trend that we always see. So we need more support and more allies to be on board, because they're not being transparent with us. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just, we need these demands and we need our voices to be heard.
A lot of our panelists had to leave for other commitments, but I'm going to share this slide so you can see our emails and the information for Tuesday, July 17th, when our next session will be 6 p.m. same time, live streamed on the same channel. We encourage you to contact us if you want to get involved, if you have ideas, if you have comments, or you just want to offer support. Thank you again to all the panelists who are still here and who have left. Thank you all for listening. I saw that we had our school administration and town government also represented among registrants and YouTube commentators. We are very grateful to you, and we look forward to seeing you on July 17th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.